Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us here for the Esri Canada UC Recap webcast. This is Chris North, the Director of Industry Solutions for Esri Canada. I'm joined by Samaya Siddiqui and Mike Grigotsky, who are going to help me with today's presentation. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today. So, without any further ado, let's dive right in. First, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are open to questions here. What we're going to do is, you're all on mute. We can't hear you, but you do have a Q&A panel built into the webcast application. You can choose to ask all panelists. We will see the question pop up on our administration module here, and we'll do our best to answer that question. We're hoping to leave some time at the end to answer some of the questions that come in. If we don't get to your particular question, we will do our best through the logs to follow up with you, or at any time, feel free to send us an email. My email is cnorth@esri.ca. If you can't see the Q&A panel right now, you should see a Q&A button with a little question mark in your WebEx event application. Just click that, and that should load up the panel. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, we put together today's agenda. It was an idea we hatched several weeks ago, the idea of doing a bit of a Q&A, a bit of a recap and Q&A about for the content that we did at our user conferences this past fall. We wanted to give people the opportunity to learn some of the big ideas that we talked about at the user conference, the way that you can elevate your organized GIS and really start to get more out of the GIS infrastructure that you've got today. We also had a lot of feedback at our user conferences this past fall and spring. We did a number of things. We sent out pre- and post-conference surveys where we gave our attendees the opportunity to ask questions. We also did a live Q&A during one of the sessions in the plenary, and we got a lot of questions come in. Now, we didn't get the time to answer all of those, and we were at 8 or 9 different events. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to summarize those questions, and we're going to go through some of the common questions that we got over and over and over again through the fall. And we're going to actually use those questions to sort of shape some of the content we show you in this particular webcast. We also want to show you some of the demonstrations on some of the technology that we showed at the fall user conferences. So this webcast is for people who both were in attendance at our user conferences, and for those of you who might have been at the UC this past fall, here's a chance for you to get some of the answers to some of the questions that we got. For those of you who were not at our user conferences this past fall, here's an opportunity for you to see some of the technology that we did.
Hey, Chris.
So, yeah, hey, Mike.
Why don't we do a poll actually and ask people if they attended one of our user conferences or not?
All right. That sounds great.
So I've opened up a poll, and Chris, Samaya, and I would like to know, did you attend an Esri user conference in, well, we'll even say 2018, whether you made it in the spring or whether you made it in the fall. So we'll get those answers as the poll comes in right now. And I think to what Chris was saying, whether you attended a conference or not, this is an excellent opportunity for you to either see what we showed at the conference, like a bit of a recap, or if you hadn't been there, this is going to give you a nice overview of some of the things that we did show. So those results are coming in. Let's show those poll results. And what do we have here? What are we showing? That looks like most of you were not able to attend a user conference in 2018, but a good third of you were. So that's a nice amount. So for the third, this will be a bit of a recap. You'll see some of the things that we showed. And for the other 2/3, there'll be lots of great information that we have here. And for that third as well, maybe we'll actually be answering your questions. So Chris, why don't you continue on?
Great. Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. That's kind of interesting. So we do have, as we sort of suspected, there are, for the third of you that were at the UC, we're going to answer some of the questions that you had. And for those of you, all of this content is new. So thanks for joining us today. So let's take a look at some of the themes that we talked about at the Fall User Conference. As part of the plenary this year, we reinforced the new notion of GIS being all about the science of where. And what we did in the plenary session is that we took the science of where and we kind of deconstructed it into what we see as its component parts. Where do we apply the science of geography, the science of where, and where do we apply geographic knowledge to the problems and challenges that our organizations are working on in many different industries and across many different disciplines. And what we see is that there's a kind of a flow, there's a kind of a framework to the science of where that really begins with data management and data integration and moves on to visualization and mapping, from there into analysis and modeling, and then from there, once we've done the analysis, we're able to sort of plan and design our communities, our organizations, whatever it is that we are, our workflows, and then make decisions and take action. So what we did as part of our presentations in the fall is that we used this science of where, and we kind of broke these things down a little bit further, and we talked about content, analytics, geodesign, and collaboration. And there's a few of those things that we want to pull out into our presentation today. In particular, we want to show you some of the really interesting things that we've done with content and analytics and some of the things that are going on in Pro around visualization and mapping. We're going to talk a little bit about, in the geodesign realm, we're going to talk about some new technology coming out, a new product called ArcGIS Urban. And Mike and Samaya are going to show us some of the really interesting things around collaboration. And collaboration not only between organizations, but also collaborating within your organization. So we had some really nice themes that we talked about. We also, in the fall today, talked a fair bit about what GIS can be and what it means in today's environment. And we really think that GIS provides a tremendous platform for us to solve problems using that science of where. We're able to integrate location technology and location information and bring things together and gain new understanding of these integrated data sets and these integrated phenomena through the application of analytics and our ability to apply geographic science and apply modeling to that integrated information within the platform and really make sense of it all. Now, none of that would make any sense, or there would be no point to that, unless you were able to communicate the results of what it is you've done through maps and through visualization. So we're able to take all of these themes and spread them across a number of demonstrations of the technology in our platform, ultimately towards using this information and this technology to gain a better understanding into what's going on within our community, within our organization, within our society, within our company, whatever have you. Now, we think that this new approach is really driving a digital transformation. A digital transformation is one of those terms that's used everywhere. We talk about digital transformation in IT. We talk about digital transformation in media. We also see digital transformation in GIS and in the things that we do day in and day out. And I remember it was really interesting for me when Alec Miller was doing his plenary and he was delivering this talk. He was very adamant about making the point that digital transformation is about more than just digitizing our maps. We're not talking about simply taking our maps and turning them into PDFs, or taking our maps and turning them into digital web services that can be viewed in a browser. Digital transformation is far more than that. It's about taking our workflows. It's about digitizing the automation and the workflows that we apply to our technology. It's about digitizing the data. It's about digitizing the information products that are available. It's about changing how organizations work and how the entire organizations function by taking on this digital transformation. And that's really where this notion of integrated operations and the notion of collaboration, which was a huge part of what it is we talked about at the Fall User Conference and what we're going to talk to you over the next couple of minutes here. This digital transformation really leads to the interconnection and the engagement of everybody through geography, through this common language of geography. We talked at length about integrating people with a GIS, about integrating organizations with a GIS, and about reaching out and engaging communities with GIS, and bringing all of that back to the platform and being able to really reach out, engage, and interconnect everyone through the power of the science of where and through the power of our platform of technology and content and information to really make it work for everyone. So those were kind of some of the major themes we had within the Fall User Conference. Now, what we'd like to do is we want to show you some of this technology, and we also want to talk a little bit about some of the questions and some of the feedback that we got from this organization. So we're doing something a little bit creative here. We're going to combine these two things together. We're going to use the questions to frame our conversations and to frame the presentations we do for you, where we show you technology to address some of these themes. So let's get started with that. ArcGIS Pro was a big part of what we showcased at the Fall User Conference this year. And we got a lot of questions coming back from the audience members about whether or not they think ArcGIS Pro is mature enough to replace ArcMap. And we certainly think that it definitely is. We showcased a lot of the new capabilities for ArcGIS Pro, and we talked a lot about what people are doing. I really think ArcGIS Pro is mature. It is a mature, fully functional, fully featured GIS desktop. What's interesting, though, is the nature of this question. Do we think it's mature enough to replace ArcMap? And I would put the question back to people who say, why do they feel they need to replace ArcMap? ArcGIS Pro is a part of your desktop seat. If you're a desktop GIS user, if you've got ArcGIS Desktop Basic or Standard or Advanced, you have ArcMap, you have Catalog, and you have ArcGIS Pro. And that was something we reinforced time and time again. So I don't think it's really about replacing ArcMap with ArcGIS Pro. I think it's about looking at your desktop technology and looking at the capabilities that Pro offers you, because there are many, many things that ArcGIS Pro does that ArcMap does not do. So people talk a lot about equivalency. The two technologies will never be equivalent. They are different. There are things that Pro does that ArcMap will never do. So I think the correct answer to this question is, now is the time. ArcGIS Pro is certainly mature enough that now is the time to take a look at this tool and see what it offers to your organization and to your workflow. Now, sort of a misconception that came out of these questions is a lot of people were kind of confused about how ArcGIS Pro is licensed. We had a lot of people question us, well, I can't use Pro because we use concurrent use licensing with our organization. I think it's important to stress to everyone that ArcGIS Pro is licensed exactly the same way as your ArcMap desktop seat is licensed today. If you license your ArcGIS desktop seat through concurrent use, single use, or you can also license ArcGIS Pro the same way, because ArcGIS Pro is part of your desktop seat. So I'm going to ask Samaya at this point to give us a demonstration to showcase this, and this is something that we were talking about at the user conferences. So Samaya?
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so here we are at our start page for ArcGIS Pro, and what I want to point everyone's attention to is this corner here. And you can see that I'm logged into my ArcGIS Online account. So let's go into actually licensing ArcGIS Pro, and we can do this by going through settings and into this Okay, so sorry about that, guys. So here we are back at the ArcGIS Pro startup page, and I just want to bring everyone's attention to this corner right over here, and you'll see that I'm logged into my ArcGIS Online account. So we'll go through our settings and we'll go through our licensing page. So here you can see that I'm already licensed, and I'm licensed using my named user. So here at the top, you'll see that you'll see the license type, you'll see my license level. So I have an advanced license, and then you'll see any Esri extensions that I have authorized. So let's go in and let's configure our licensing options. Now, currently, like I said, I'm a named user license, but I can also switch over to being a single-use license. Now, I've already authorized this, so you can see here that I've got my advanced license level, and also I've got the 3D analyst and spatial analyst extensions authorized. You can do the same thing for your concurrent use license. But something I wanted to show is how similar licensing your single-use license can be. So let's click that authorize button, and you'll see that the software authorization wizard brings back a lot of nostalgia. So we can go through this, we can go through all these pages, fill all these out, and then you'll come to your area where you can just fill in your authorization number. So one thing I wanted to show is how you can easily license using ArcGIS Online or using your ArcGIS Enterprise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my ArcGIS Online account, and I'm going to authorize my 3D Analyst license. So we'll just close ArcGIS Online. And here I am in ArcGIS, we'll just close ArcGIS Pro. Here I'm in ArcGIS Online, and you'll see that I am logged into my ArcGIS Online account. Now, I can access my licenses through my organization, and I do have an administrator role and a creator user type, and that allows me to administer my organization. So here we are. I can either assign or unassign my license levels, or down here, I can also assign my ArcGIS Pro extensions. So let's go inside and we'll assign this 3D analyst to myself. Okay, just like that, we're done. And I'll open up ArcGIS Pro again. And you can see how really simple it is through ArcGIS Online. I'll just go back into my licensing, and there you go. You'll see that my 3D analyst has been authorized and it's ready to use. So licensing for ArcGIS Pro is very simple and also can be very familiar if you're going to be using a concurrent license or a single-use license. Back to you, Chris.
Great, thanks, Samaya. So another point to mention there is that we wanted to show you the new the ability to license named users, license ArcGIS Pro through the named user capability over and above the ability to license Pro through concurrent use licensing and the single use licensing. You can, that same authorization that Samaya went in and gave herself the 3D Analyst extension through online, you can also do that through an enterprise portal as well, and it's exactly the same user experience. So thank you very much, Samaya. Okay, continuing with questions about Pro, I'm continually surprised at how many people ask this question all the time. When will ArcGIS Pro users be able to publish to a traditional ArcGIS server? That's kind of an interesting question because first it leads me to ask what a traditional ArcGIS server is. So what people really need to understand about ArcGIS Pro is that ArcGIS Pro is a fully connected desktop. It has the ability not only to consume information products directly from the Living Atlas, from ArcGIS Online, from your enterprise, your ArcGIS Enterprise portal, it also has the ability to publish information products to your ArcGIS Online organization or your enterprise portal. In fact, ArcGIS Pro has the ability to publish more types of information products than ArcMap ever did. ArcMap could publish a feature service or a map service or a geocoding service. ArcGIS Pro can publish a feature service, a map service, a geocoding service, they can also publish web maps and web layers and task services, and the list goes on and on and on. So it's a more connected desktop. Now, some people pointed out that ArcGIS Pro by default requires the portal component or requires ArcGIS Online, and they may not be using that. And the reason we did that was that we do require that you have a named user, because we want to know who published, we want to be able to manage, and we want to be able to have the same information content management, and we want to make sure that ArcGIS Pro evolves that. However, it is possible now, starting with ArcGIS Pro version 2.3, to publish simple map services and simple feature services to a non-federated ArcGIS server through the Python API. So you can do it through Python scripts if you still need to publish to the quote-unquote standalone server. Just install ArcGIS Pro version 2.3 and you'll be able to do that. And version 2.3 will be available for download within a couple of days. All right. Something else that a lot of people asked about ArcGIS Pro were some of the new mapping tools that we should use and consider using ArcGIS Pro. Now, mapping tools is kind of a broad swath, if you like, but I get really excited about ArcGIS Pro and its ability to create maps. So a mapping tool to me is also the fact that ArcGIS Pro has multiple layouts and has very good graphing capabilities. The ability to create charts and maps in Pro is extremely powerful. There's also the whole smart mapping framework, which some of you may have used in ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise. The smart mapping tools, those default settings, and those very powerful statistically generated mapping suggestions and classification suggestions are also part of ArcGIS Pro, as are things like multivariable symbology, and something I really get excited about is symbol-based scale dependency. Not only do you have scale dependency on a layer, but you have scale dependency feature by feature and layer and symbol by symbol within a layer. So what we're going to do is showcase some of these advanced mapping capabilities, and Mike's going to give us a sneak preview, give us a taste of some of the things that we showed at the UCs. Mike?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot, Chris. So let's take a look at some of this functionality, and we're going to go into an election map from 2015, and I'm going to move into one of the areas here, one of the cities that we actually visited in 2018, Montreal. So as I'm zooming in here, we're going to see some information here. The results are based on the symbology is based on the riding. We've done some work where we've configured our pop-ups to give some good information here with some charts. We've also done used our symbology tools here with our unique values to symbolize this based on the margin of victory for each party. So we see here the darker the orange, the more votes for the NDP in that case, a little less margin of victory here versus over here. So this is interesting to see. Now, what if we want to get a better understanding of the distribution of the votes across the country and how those sort of worked out? Well, this is where we can use some of those charting tools that Chris talked about for how we can really get the most out of our map and our data. So let's take a look at a box plot. This is a nice way to take a look at this information by across the entire country, and we could break this down by province. So if I go into my chart properties here, I can create a multiple series from multiple fields. So if I want to group this by the province, I can then add in each of these parties here. So I could take the 5 major parties, take the Bloc, the Conservatives, what else we got here, the Greens, Liberals, and let's get the NDP in there as well. So we start to see the distribution of the votes. Maybe we want to make this look a little bit easier to see, show the outliers, standardize it. We can get a neat understanding of the distribution of the votes across the country, outliers, and so on. And if we want to take a little bit more time and spruce this up a bit, we could align this by changing our colors, provide some good title information, some good surrounds on our axes, and so on. So one of the ways that we can use charting to get the most out of our information and our data. Now, another way that we can work with this is maybe I want to get an understanding of the ridings themselves and take a look at the population and sort of see, like, our ridings, are they approximately the same size, and what that actually means. So if we look at the population for each riding here, and I'll just sort them, we see we have values down from 26,000 and they go up to, well over 100,000. So we've got some discrepancies in the writings, and this can affect, how much vote there is per, weighted in the House of Commons. So what we could look at in this case here, we could take a look at the statistics here. So lots of great statistics here that are going to help us understand our data and map it out even further. So we can see here the mean value. I get this from our statistics, just under 100,000 people per riding. We can see the median. We could see the standard deviations as well. Now, as I want to explore this further, let's bring in the normal distribution too. I'm going to bump this up a little bit here so we have more bins to work this out. And then I can interactively work with the chart and the map. And that's one of the great things we could do here. So let's do this. Let's take this tab here and put it up against our map. And then if we were to just select everything that we have in our map, selection, select all the visible features, we'll see that corresponding selection in the Montreal riding. And even if we zoom out a little bit, we'll expand that selection as well. So we see those ridings in Montreal, they're all falling in that meaty part of the curve there around the mean. But if we wanted to go a little bit further out, let's just see here. We'll not go further up, but let's select everything that's below that standard deviation. Nothing in the Montreal area, but we can also go out to the entire layer. And what are we going to see here? Well, we'll see a selection across lots of parts of the country. Kind of hard to tell what's happening. So let's make that symbology, let's make the selection here, make the layers from selected features visible. So as I'm combining these chart tools with our map, we're really getting an understanding of our data. We're mapping it out in different ways. And we can see in this case here where those smaller ridings are. So interesting information seeing up north, out in Atlantic Canada, parts of Northern Ontario and Saskatchewan have these smaller size ridings. So that might, gives us some information to reflect about how these ridings are actually shown. One last thing I'm going to show before I turn things over to Chris. Chris mentioned layouts. Lots of good information that we can get in our layout if we're going to be producing a layout of perhaps a hard copy map or a PDF of that map. I've got a map here which shows the entire country. I've got a table here, but what I'll do here, make a couple quick changes to it. If I zoom in, this table is dynamic. So those results, if I zoom back into the Montreal area, it changes here. If I want to have a little more control on what's shown in the table, I can turn on and off different fields. I may want to put in the population as well. I can even go through and go into the properties and activate how I want to sort this information. So maybe I want to sort this by population. I can do it by ascending, descending values. I've got all this opportunity to really make that layout how I want to have it in the end. So that's a quick look at some of these new mapping tools that we have in ArcGIS Pro, and I'll turn it back over to Chris.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. So hopefully you can see with some of those things why we're pretty excited about ArcGIS Pro and why we showcase it, and we really encourage everybody just to give it a try. It's part of your desktop license. Doesn't require anything new. It doesn't require a different license. You have this technology right now. Download it, try it out, and start using ArcGIS Pro. Now, continuing with that, we also talked a lot about analysis and analytics, both in Pro and some of our other tools. And we got some questions. A lot of people were asking about machine learning and artificial intelligence around GIS. In fact, we showed at the user conference this past fall 2 different demonstrations used machine learning technology that's already in the box in ArcGIS Desktop today. We looked at some machine learning capabilities that are part of the new image analyst extension that's new for ArcGIS Pro, just released a few months ago. And is a really powerful tool for doing image classification, image processing, 3D stereo visualization, 3D stereo data capture, and so on. And it has machine learning classification tools built right into the geoprocessing framework. So machine learning and AI isn't something sort of big and fancy and futuristic that you go out and get and try to integrate with your GIS. Machine learning and artificial intelligence is something that you've got in your desktop today, and you can start using it today. And there's other machine learning tools and some things that we can do around data analysis and data interpolation, and we showed some demonstrations where we did some analytics around demographic data and some machine learning tools. We looked at the cases of diabetes and the prevalence of diabetes in certain areas of the country, and it was really powerful stuff. But I think what we want to do is really showcase this, so I'm going to turn things back over to Mike to take a look at not only the image analysis extension, but also show us where that machine learning fits in. Mike?
Thanks again there, Chris. So let's take a look. We'll go back into Pro here, and we're going to work with that image data set that Chris was talking about here. And I've got imagery here of St. John's that I'd like to use for land utilization, land classification. And what I've done here is I've used the extract bands tool here to create image that shows basically extract the band combination of 4, 1, 3, since it's a multi-band image. And that's showing me areas that are urban in sort of blues and grays, and areas that are forest or vegetation in red. So what I'm doing here is leading up to be able to train ArcGIS Pro to use machine learning to classify this image. So as part of this, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to just segment this imagery here so I can get a more generalized view of it. So when I go into a specific area here and I compare the imagery that I have from my segmented imagery and to the bands that were extracted, and I do a swipe, I see I've got this generalized imagery, which is going to work really well for my image classification. So the way I would do the image classification is I would jump into the classification wizard, and I've already started that process here. What this allows me to do is basically do a supervised classification where I take a segmented image, and I'm going to use a training data set here. So the purpose of this data set, as I bring that up, is these are training areas where I'm basically telling ArcGIS Pro that this is water, this is a building, this is a road, and so on. So I can continually add different features to this training sample to teach ArcGIS Pro how to do that image classification. So I would continue on, get to our next area, determine the type of training method we would use, and then after running this, takes a minute or two, I would get an end result, which would give me a classification like this. So I can see greens are vegetation, reds are roads. Let's go back to that neighborhood, and we get a classification here with those different values. So pretty quickly with Pro, I can do that image classification, do some training of the software, basically leverage some machine learning to get a pretty quick image classification of this data that I've been working with. So one of the ways we can use machine learning, artificial intelligence in Pro. I'll turn that back to you, Chris.
Great, thanks, Mike. So that covers a lot of what we want to talk about Pro, and no surprise, and we've been seeing some of the questions coming in for the panel discussion. So thank you very much. We've been frantically trying to answer some of these questions that have come in on Pro. So please keep them coming. But hopefully you've seen that Pro really is. We really want to demystify Pro. Pro is simply a tool that is part of your desktop implementation. Get it, start using it, play around with it. It does some great things. It does some things that is better than ArcMap. It does things that some things that ArcMap doesn't even do. So it really is a good time to start learning and playing around with Pro and some of its advanced capabilities. Okay, so let's switch to the mobile world as well. We showcased a lot of the mobile technology as part of our fall demonstrations. We did a number of mobile workflows. And a question that kept coming up time and time again is, gee, why does Esri create so many mobile apps instead of one all-purpose mobile app? And the reason for that is really quite simple. There are a number of different functions and requirements that people have when they are out in the field. But if we were to create a single app that does absolutely everything that our user base needs to do, well, you know what? It would look a lot like ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro. It would look a lot like a fully featured GIS desktop. And there's just no sense in bringing a fully featured GIS with you out in the field. You can if you want. You can get a ruggedized PC, put ArcGIS Pro onto it, check out the license like Samaya mentioned, and take that out in the field with you, and away you go. Everything in a single app. But what we find is that for a mobile workforce that's trying to do simple, focused tasks while they're out in the field, the requirement is that we have single focused app that mirror those tasks as closely as we can. Now, it's not like we just do these things in isolation. We have integrated these applications together. So I can be dispatched through Workforce, I can accept my task in the Workforce app and simply click a button, and that will take me to the survey that I need to fill out in Survey 123 and drill me into the right location. So we've integrated these applications and we've made them work seamlessly together, but we really believe that the best approach going forward is to build focused apps for the mobile world that are really focused on very specific tasks. Now, we also showcase some of the new capabilities coming in the new collector for ArcGIS in some of our breakout sessions. And for those of you who have gone to the App Store, you'll notice that there is a brand new version of ArcGIS Collector. The old version of Collector is now called Collector Classic and is still available for download from your App Store for your device platform. But the new collector has a number of new features. And one of the questions that we got from a lot of people is, when are smart forms going to be available for collector for ArcGIS? To be clear, the ability to create intelligent survey forms is going to remain part of what Survey 123 does. However, as part of the new collector coming out in a release later this year, we are going to be putting in place some arcade-based logic into the forms so that you can do some what we call intelligent or smart forms within collector for 123. This will be the ability to do things like calculate specific values, test ranges, things like that that you'll be able to do in collector. But it won't be the ability to create and customize a form. If you want to do that, you want to use Survey 123. And as I've already mentioned, you can certainly have Survey 123 and collector work side by side and in conjunction and talk to each other through URL-based information exchange right down on your app, on your mobile device. Another question that came out of that in the mobile world is, how do I determine whether to use collector or Survey 123 for field data collection? And I guess in some senses, the two products do sound kind of the same. If you look at them from the simple point of the simple font of going out in the field and getting a point and filling out some information, yeah, that works, and that makes the two things look the same. But really, here's the difference. Collector is for updating, collecting, creating, updating, and editing your GIS feature data. If your fire hydrants or your pipes or your forest stands are GIS features, then with attributes, then collector is the tool that you want to use. If you are going out and collecting information about a phenomena, information about a condition, information about an observation, you want to use Survey 123 because it's more form-centric and it gives you the ability to do better forms and better form logic. The simple rule of thumb here is, if I go back to the field, if I go back to the same location 2 weeks from now, if I expect that fire hydrant to still be there and I just want to collect and update the information about it, I would use collector. If I'm making an observation and I'm doing an animal report or a nesting site or something like that, and chances are next week, next month, next year, that feature won't be there, you know, use Survey 123 because you're collecting information about a phenomenon. So those kind of a rule of thumb and how you can use the two things together. All right. So at this point, we've looked at a number of questions about ArcGIS Pro and the mobile suite. And what I'd like to do now is move on to some of the other things. And again, we've got all the questions rolling in on the panel, so thank you very much. We'll keep answering those.
Why don't I answer a couple of them right now, Chris,
sure,
just
Mike,
as we go through here, because some people might have the same question. Hillary was asking about ArcGIS Pro, whether or not if there's any information about the attribute assistant coming into ArcGIS Pro at 2.3. And yes, this has been called attribute rules, and there's a blog post that's just come out that I'll share with everyone that has that further information. So I'll share that through the Q&A panel for everyone to see. And another question came in from Eugene. It was asking about that image classification, if we could take the results of it and turn it into vector features. And yeah, we could use the different tools available in ArcGIS Pro to convert that resulting raster to a vector format and then have the individual vectors for those features as well. So thanks, Chris. Just thought I'd throw those two in there for everybody.
Great, thanks very much, Mike. And the questions are coming in great, so it almost looks like we're going to have to do another webcast to answer the questions from the Q&A webcast, so thanks very much. All right, as we did the home stretch here on our webcast, I wanted to talk a little bit about ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online, because one of the themes that I'd mentioned earlier, after the sort of analytics and workflow and data management, content management, we talked a lot about sharing and collaboration. This is a huge focus for us in terms of what we're trying to do with the platform. And sharing and collaboration is the fundamental role of ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. These are the technologies which are your geo content management systems. So we got lots of questions that came up about how you can easily move content or feature layers or things back and forth between ArcGIS Enterprise, another ArcGIS Enterprise, or from ArcGIS Online to another one. There are tools available to you. If you need to do a one-time migration and you just want to move a bunch of maps and data sets from online to enterprise or from one online organization to another, there's tools like the ArcGIS Online Assistant, and we have a business partner, GeoJob, who's got a really good tool for sort of one-time migration of content from one to the other. But one of the things that we showed at length in the fall was the ability to have more of a dynamic workflow, more of an ability to collaborate content back and forth in real time, not just a one-time, movement or copying and pasting or of data from one to another, but a workflow where changes can go back and forth dynamically over time. And one of those was we demonstrated the ability to do dynamic collaboration. So I'm going to ask Samaya and Mike to show some of this new collaboration capabilities.
Thanks, Chris. So what Mike and I are going to show you are how two enterprise portals are going to talk to each other and securely share their data by using distributed collaboration tools. So in this scenario, I work for the city of Whitehorse, and I'm in my enterprise portal right now, and you can see that I'm using my identity. And Mike in this scenario is a contractor who works for Northern Engineering, and what I want to do is I want to enable sharing and set up a collaboration where I can send synchronized copies of my data to Mike, and Mike has already set up a collaboration, and he can do the same. So let's get into it, and let's take a look at our collaboration. So through my organization, I can access my collaboration. And within my collaboration, I have a workspace. And within that workspace, I have a group. So in this case, it's infrastructure layers to Northern Engineering. Once I open this group, I can already see some of the layers that I've already shared with Mike beforehand. Now what I want is I've got a culverts layer. And I want to send that data to Mike so he could do some analysis with it. So here I've got my data. I'm simply going to go in, and I'm going to share it with the infrastructure layers to Northern Engineering group. Now, once I click OK, the synchronization process should begin. And if I go back into my group, you'll see that this culverts layer is ready to go and should be on its way to Mike. So let's see what's happening with Mike.
Yeah, okay, thanks there, Samaya. Let's go into my ArcGIS Enterprise here. So I'm working for the aforementioned engineering company here, and I am signed in with my identity. And what I'll have here on the other end is I'll have that conduit through which this collaboration is taking place. So I have this Whitehorse infrastructure collaboration, which has been set up by myself and Samaya. So I currently have those 3 layers available to me that we saw at the beginning. We can see this collaboration partakes in a group, so I know that a colleague of mine with her identity had set this up. We have the parameters of this. We can see that these different layers allow us to tell whether they came from us, or in this case, I know these came from Samaya and our City of Whitehorse enterprise because it says this was collaborated content. So as that synchronization process is occurring, I'll then, in a minute or two, if I go back into this collaboration, I'll then have those culverts showing up. So really, I could do anything with this content. I could, in this case, open up a web map here in a map viewer. I'll have 2 of those layers, and really, so there's those 2 other layers that we saw in the group, but I can add in those culverts from my ArcGIS enterprise, and I can use those in the map. So we can see these have come across, and this is just available to me to use in this map. I could perform analysis on this. I can do anything that I would like with this. Any results that I have, perhaps I produce some new layers, I could even synchronize those back over to Samaya, and she could see the underlying results as well. So I think this is a good place to turn things back over to Chris. He can give us some more of those great questions you guys have been asking. Let's see what we got up here next.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, guys. And hopefully people saw, and I know as well you're doing the demonstration, we got a lot of questions coming in. So it looks like that collaboration is something that's quite popular. So this was an interesting question we got a few times. Will there be a time when ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online are feature equivalent? Certainly, it is our goal to make sure that the user experience and the capabilities of ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online are the same for users. We believe that this WebGIS pattern is something that benefits our users regardless of whether they've chosen to deploy in the SaaS model using online or whether they've chosen to deploy in an on-premises model using ArcGIS Enterprise. Having said that, we can't do everything all at once. You know, some new capabilities we develop and deploy first in the online world, and then we bring those into enterprise. Case in point, things like smart mapping and some of the new open data and sites capability, which we'll talk about in just a second. On the other side, there's some things that we develop and deploy first in ArcGIS Enterprise and then move over into ArcGIS Online, things like the insights and some of the other more advanced sort of data store capabilities which are coming. Also keep in mind that the 2 technologies are on a different release schedule. Esri updates ArcGIS Online 4 times a year on a fairly regular cadence. We release enterprise software on an annual cadence with an update usually halfway through the year, but it's up to our users when they're able to and when they choose to deploy those. So there's always this sort of leapfrogging that's going on with these capabilities. But we certainly do our best to make sure that the overall user experience and the capabilities are as close as we can possibly make them in both deployment platforms. Now, some people asked about named users in sites, and it was kind of an interesting thing because one of the things that a new technology we introduced in the fall was the ability of sites, and that's one of those things that we've taken from the online world and we've now brought that into the enterprise world, and that's the ability to create sites and pages to improve the overall experience and to be able to provide sort of private group-based collaborations and group-based destinations that leverage your enterprise identity. So the answer to that question is, well, yeah, you do need a named user to access it unless you share it with everyone in the same way that you need a named user to access an app unless you share it with everyone. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Mike for a quick demonstrations of the new site's capabilities.
Thanks, Chris. So I'm back into one of our organizations here. I'm going to go into the Whitehorse one in this case. You sort of saw how Samaya and I were finding information in our organizations. I could search, easy way to find stuff. Groups are another easy way to find things. I could look at my organization's groups for different things that might relate to me. So what Chris was talking about with sites here, they provide us a real destination page, so we don't have to really search. We can bring that information forward to the people who specifically need it. So I've created a destination page here using sites for these infrastructure projects. So I'm providing people that information that they need in the city of Whitehorse on their ArcGIS Enterprise, the staff that work there, a searchable index for the projects, different categories that they can link to. I've integrated a web app that shows information about the spending on each of the areas, and I've also got infrastructure projects that they can link to specifically under those specific categories. So I manage this all in my organization through the sites application, where I can go through, configure different sites, configure the different pages that I want to work with, and then I can get those working exactly as I want. Very similar to the ArcGIS open data user experience for creating those sites. So just to go specifically to that question, that site just becomes a item in my organization that we see here. So I could, if I wanted to provide this to everyone within my ArcGIS Enterprise organization, access to it, I could share it with everyone, the organization, even put it in a specific group. So if we were back at the home page now, that site page would be available to us with our identity or without it, and then I could link to that page as well. So that's a quick look at sites, how we can share the item and how we can use it to maximize that destination page in our organization. So back to you, Chris.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike. I'm pretty excited about sites because it solves a problem that a lot of customers have been asking for quite some time. How do I create a really nice looking destination inside my organization where I can put all the content, but then sort of share that just with a private focused group to better improve their workflows and their collaboration. So ArcGIS Sites is part of the ArcGIS Enterprise at 10.6.1. There's no extra cost, no license required. It's just now a new capability of ArcGIS Enterprise starting at 10.6.1 and going forward. Now, whenever we demonstrate ArcGIS Online, we always get questions about credits and what uses credits in ArcGIS Online. There's two ways I'd like to answer this question. So the simple question is, can you explain what uses credits in ArcGIS Online? Well, anything that leverages third-party capabilities does consume a small number of credits if you use them. So things like geo-enrichment, things like geocoding, the ability to do routing. We are relying on partner content and partner technologies to make those services available through ArcGIS Online. And the credits are the commerce through which those partners get paid for their intellectual property. Also, when you store content, some organizations only store a little bit of content. Some organizations store a vast amount of content in ArcGIS Online. So we use credits to help sort of balance out that. However, one of the things that's universal is that all customers, once they start using ArcGIS Online, come to the same conclusion that they really didn't use as many credits as they were worried that they were going to, and really all their fear and concern was for naught. And also, ArcGIS Online provides a great set of tools for you to budget credits at the individual user level, gives you the ability to control who has access to credit-consuming capabilities, and also gives you the ability to report on your credit consumption and the overall use of your entire ArcGIS Online organization, and so that you can really keep tabs on that and really keep track of. So really, I'm just going to ask that question by saying to people, really don't worry about the use of ArcGIS Online credits. And of course, if you really don't want to use them to do simple routing and whatnot in ArcGIS Online, you can still go and get your network analyst extension and use your own data and build your own sort. You don't have to use credits. They're there for usage-based functions. Now, we alluded to this earlier in our Facebook Live post when we were promoting this. The big sort of ta-da at the Fall User Conference was the introduction of some new technology, and one of those was a new product called ArcGIS Urban. And a lot of people were really blown away by ArcGIS Urban. It's a great new product that's coming out later this year, probably in the second half of 2019. It will be in the early adopter stage very, very soon. We've taken the entire urban design and urban planning process and encapsulated into a single solution that leverages the ArcGIS platform. And we showcased this at the user conference in the fall, and it was so popular and so well received that I'm going to ask Samaya to show us a very brief introduction to urban as part of our CAL today. Samaya?
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so ArcGIS Urban is a new solutions product and is built to provide a common solution for urban developers, for urban planners, developers, architects, and citizens. And it brings all these key stakeholders onto a single platform. So let's jump right into it. Here we can see that we're looking at the city of Boston, and you can see all the statuses of the current plans and projects. And for example, any of the statuses that are green represent approved projects. So let's go in and let's take a look at one of our plans. So we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at South Boston, the Dorchester Avenue Initiative, or also known as .avd. And we'll be using ArcGIS Urban to plan this neighborhood of Boston in a 3D web browser. So what we can do is when we click on the edit pencil over here, the scenario planning capability in Urban opens right away. And we can see the baseline scenario or our existing conditions. But let's go in and let's open up a new proposal for development. So we're going to open up this proposal. And what you can see are there's a lot of new heights, building uses for this proposal. I'm going to open up this dashboard over here, and you'll see that majority of space use in this area is residential. So we're going to go in and we're going to change it to office. So I'm going to select this parcel, and I'm going to open up the parcel editor. I'm going to quickly override this height. I'll make it a little shorter. I'll update that. And then I'll change the space use to office space. I'll go ahead and I'll update that. And you'll see how the building gets dynamically updated and how the corridor dramatically changes. So ArcGIS Urban provides a central overview of plans like you just saw, but it also provides information about active projects. So let's take a look at an active project known as 115 Winthrop Square. So we can go inside, take a look at this proposed building. We can hit details, and that will open a hub page with some more public-facing information about this project. So we can go back into Urban. And lastly, I want to show some indicators. And you'll be able to see some population indicators and where majority of that population in Boston actually is. So that's concentrated in the downtown area and in the Dorchester area. Back to you, Chris.
Great, thanks very much, Samaya. So now Samaya was showing us some of the cool capabilities of Urban, and yes, we were showing at Boston, and many of you are probably sitting there saying, well, I work for a municipal organization that's nowhere near the size of Boston. It doesn't matter. Every municipality has to do urban planning. Every municipality, even if you don't have 30 or 40-story skyscrapers, you still are interested in a plan that's geographically sound and understanding the impacts of changes that you make in land use and changes that you have on indicators like population and water consumption and traffic and so on. So Urban will scale to the very large urban communities and will also scale to the very small and mid-sized municipal organizations. So we don't want you thinking that you got to be Boston size for this to be of any value. Okay, last two questions that I have are once we get all the time, and I just want to answer them quickly, and then we'll wrap things up here. You know, a lot of users ask us at the end of these user conferences, if I'm to implement only one thing that was shown at the user conferences, what would it be? And you know what? I think that if you're a GIS user, the one thing that you should implement right now is ArcGIS Pro. I think the time has come to download it, install it as part of your desktop seat, get it, get your licensing hooked up. You don't need a named user, you don't need ArcGIS Online. Hook it up the same way you're hooking up ArcMap right now, and try it. You'll be really impressed with how easy it is to use and how powerful it is in its ability to use GIS things. If you're a GIS manager, the one thing I'm really excited about and that I think that you should do is really start thinking about collaboration. Really start thinking about looking at not only the collaboration tools like we showed you, the ability to move data around, but look at sites. It's free. Look at your ArcGIS Online pages as part of the hub and open data technology. It's free. You don't need to have an open data policy or have a need for an open data site right now. Just use some pages to start creating destinations for other users within your organization. And last but not least, at the conferences, I'm always asked this, at the conference, your audience already knows the benefits of GIS. And that's very true. It's a very GIS-savvy group that comes to an Esri user conference. The question I'm often asked is how can we better get to our managers, directors, and decision makers to support us getting others to adopt this technology? And I absolutely love this question. This is why I wanted to end on this question. The one thing that you can do is go after the low-hanging fruit. We have a lot of really simple, easy-to-use components to our GIS. Don't feel that you need to go and blow the world away with your dynamic segmentation or your Krieging interpolation or your extraordinarily complex ArcGIS urban 3D scenes. Take a story map to a manager. Take a dashboard to a manager. You talking to somebody who's got a bunch of spreadsheets and they're trying to manage that data and they want to see dots on a map, give them the ArcGIS Maps for Office. It's free. They can log in, they can do dots on a map, they can discover the power of GIS on their own terms in an environment that they're comfortable with. Start really simple and start promoting these things. Operations dashboards, story maps, and Maps for Office, really simple, easy to use tools that even I can use them. And I'm a director. So by all means, take them to your director, show them, they don't need to think that it's the complexity of Pro or ArcMap. It can be really, really simple, and often simple is very, very powerful. So just to wrap up our content today, thank you very much to everyone who attended. We really appreciate it. Hopefully you learned about some of the ideas that you've got to bring your GIS up in your organization, to really inspire you on some of the things that you can do. We hope we've given you some response to your feedback, both feedback we got from the UCs and also the feedback we've been getting during the presentation today. So thank you very much to everyone who's been giving us the questions. Don't stop. We're going to keep going and send us emails. Let's keep the conversation going. And hopefully you saw we showed you some cool demonstrations of some of the things that we showed at the UCs. So on that note, I'm going to wrap things up. We'll leave this resources slide open. These links will be shared with you, but there's some upcoming webinars that you might want to attend. We had a lot of questions on Pro. On March 7th, Samaya and Sapide will be doing a webcast all on Pro 2.3. So check that out. And there's a whole bunch of training courses and the links and materials there. So I'll just say thank you very much to everybody. And as I wrap up, I'll turn things over to Mike if he's got any other comments to say. But with that, thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your time.